Yeah, Mr. Bill, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
I'd heard something about your father
Yeah.
that was very interesting, and of course, uh, about how he used to ride the trains and stuff,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and that was amazing.
Well, back in the 30s and 40s, black guys, uh, they couldn't stay where the white guys stayed. So normally what would happen with the black guys, especially a guy like my dad, let's say if he was in Baltimore somewhere, he'd fight, and then after he'd get through fighting, he would go down to the train station. And back then, I guess, hoboing was pretty prevalent. And I think you had professional hobos. But what happened, yeah, as you know, he had over 200 professional fights, which is unheard of today.
Right.
And he would fight, say, in Tucaloo, Mississippi, and then go down to the train depot and catch a train coming through, and jump on that train, sleep overnight, and then the next night he would be in another city, another little town. He'd jump off there and fight. And this one particular time, I think it was in Dr. Marilyn DeRoe wrote about it in her book. It's called The Old Mongoose. And I believe he was in, I don't want to say which state he was in, because I don't want to put a tarnish on that state. So, but this particular night, he had wound up getting off the train. No, the conductor. The conductor had caught him on the train, so he had to jump off out in the middle of the boonies. So he came upon this farmhouse, and this white lady, and he knocked on the door, and she said, "Well, you can sleep in the barn." So he went to the barn, climbed up to the top of it, and he was sleeping quite comfortably. And he had nestled in that hay, and as he tells it, he had gotten real comfortable. Then he said, just after he had dozed off, he heard all these voices, and he said he didn't pay much attention to it. Then he said the voices were getting closer and closer and closer. And he said at the top of the barn, he just peeped out, and he said, "Oh, hell." And there was a group of men approaching him with a torch burning and with a rope. And I guess you can imagine the rest of it.
Time to leave.
He bailed out. I guess they chased him for a ways, but he got away.
I'm sure him being in good physical condition helped.
That helped him.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember the whole story, but he ran for a while. But I've often imagined and thought about it, and he's talked about it. But the really wonderful thing about it, he doesn't talk about it with any animosity. He didn't talk about it with any animosity at all before he passed on. But we'd be shooting pool, and he said, "Man," he said, "I remember that night. I looked out of that barn and saw those men approaching with the torch and with the rope. And then we'd be playing pool. He liked playing banks. We played banks all the time. Then he'd chuckle. He'd say, he said, "Well, I got out there." And yeah, it's that was a heck of a thing to be, I would imagine, to be out in the middle of nowhere, to look up and see all these men. And I'm quite sure they would probably maybe been mouthing some slurs or something,
Oh, I'm sure.
but it's good for the imagination,
Yeah.
especially when the fellow that was on the end of that got away.
Mm-hmm. So if he hadn't been in such a good physical shape,
Yeah.
he might not have got away.
Because it's like I said, he had 226 recorded fights. That's recorded. Nowadays, I think the guy that came to closest to that, modern day fighter, was Julio Cesar Chavez. I think he had 100.
Wow.
I think he wound up getting 100.
Barely half what you
Yeah,
had.
yeah, barely. And then to have, now Nat Fletcher, who was the ring expert, historical expert at that time, says there are probably 10 or 15 fights that weren't even recorded, or more. And he had 100, some knockout records say 141, 142, and 146. But Nat Fletcher said he probably had closer to 150 knockouts, opposed to 146 knockouts. And I think the closest, I think Ray Robinson may have had 60 something maybe. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
And who we talking about now?
Sugar Ray Robinson. But prior to that, we're talking about Dad, Archie Moore.
Your dad, yeah,
Archie Moore.
Yes, sir.
Archie, the old mongoose Moore. And they called him Ageless Archie. Yeah. Yeah. He's an incredible guy. Incredible.
Did your father by any chance meet any of the presidents?
He, Eisenhower and Ronald Reagan. Eisenhower was the first to have him to come to the White House. And Ronald Reagan was the second. Him and Ronald Reagan were good friends. He worked for Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan was governor of California. Then he worked for him when he was president of the United States. And we have a letter from Ronald Reagan where he's talking to my dad about ABC. He says, which you know ABC is an organization that my dad started, that our dad started some years ago. And at the time it was called Any Boy Can. And Ronald Reagan wrote a letter complimenting him on this organization. And it's a prevention organization, not a rehabilitation, but prevention. And he said, Archie, you're right. If we would focus on going into prevention, catching the kids at 7 years old, before crime gets started in their lives, this country could save billions and billions and billions of dollars.
And lives.
And lives, and lives. And we have Reagan and Ronald Reagan and Eisenhower had him to come there. And to me, his greatest exploits weren't boxing. They were his humanitarian efforts. That's why he
Yeah, it took a heck of a man to me, it seemed like, to not to be bitter about some of the things, some of the negative things that might have happened to him, but he
oh, very much so. There are quite a few
didn't
negative
let
things.
them bother him.
Quite a few negative things that happened. He should have been champion 10 years before he ever became champion. The ring experts say he should have held the title for 20 years. He should have been a champion for 20 years, opposed to 10 years. He wound up leaving this country, going to Argentina to get bounced because nobody was fighting here. And Juan Perón, who was a dictator of Argentina at that time, got wind of this guy being there, Archie Moore, and invited him. He said, Archie, and all of this stuff I'm telling you now, it's documented. I have letters confirming it. Pictures with him and Perón and in Perón's cabinet. He said, if you stay in Argentina, I'll give you all the land that you can see.
Wow.
And Eva Perón. And some years later, they were putting some stuff together. And that was after Perón died. I remember a gentleman came to the house to visit our dad and was talking with him about some historical footage on some different things while he was in Argentina. Actually, Evo Perón had the gentleman to visit there. And I don't know the connotation of the whole thing, but it was a lot of marvelous things that went on around him because he was such a dynamic individual. He didn't strive to be dynamic. It was just something that really came natural. Just came to it. He loved people.
Who are Lamar and Jose?
Lamar and Jose are two of our young men. Tell you a story. Well, Lamar's a young man that had been around me since he was a kid, been around my dad, because before my dad passed on. Lamar went on to graduate from our ABC youth organization, youth ministry, and then to go on and graduate from Morehouse University. Then he had a brother by the name of Leroy Slater that came some years after him, that graduated from ABC and then went on to graduate from Morehouse University. Now, Jose Vallejo, he's a very interesting story. This is a Latino kid that found himself around me at the age of about 10 or 12 years old. And when our dad was developing this ABC, he said, this ministry will allow youngsters to go places they never dreamed that they can go. That they could go. And this kid Jose Vallejo came to me years later after it was changed from any boy can to anybody can. And he wound up going out to, he went to Bishop's High School in La Jolla. And he wound up receiving a scholarship to Yale University after he graduated from ABC. And he graduated from Bishop's. And and then he also participated with another BLOIC. It's another Latino organization, nonprofit that he graduated from. But Jose, when he received that scholarship to Yale University, he walked into my office and he was crying. He said, "Coach, I made it. I made it. I made it." So what are you talking about? Now, mind you, 50 years earlier, it was 50 years, nearly to be exact, from the date that Any Boy Can was started, that our dad said, this ministry will allow youngsters to go places they never dreamed they could go. This young man was crying. He said, "Coach, I made it." I said, what are you talking about? He said, "I'm going someplace I never dreamed that I could go." He said, "I just received a scholarship to Yale University." I was sitting kind of in one of the office chairs and almost flipped over backwards, because that's what my dad had said. This will allow youngsters to go places they never dreamed that they could go. And Jose said, "I made it. I'm going to Yale University."
That's great. He had vision of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why we have ABC still going on strong today, and with the help of a good friend of mine, Pat Lawler. So we were about to, almost it seemed like we were really, really struggling there. Pat is a guy that my dad thought was a very interesting guy, smart guy. And Pat helped us to stay afloat. He helped ABC to stay afloat. Now we have a learning center that Bob and Amy Morad have brought to the table, where we put a full-fledged library inside of a boxing gym. A full-fledged library inside of a boxing gym. That hasn't been heard of anywhere in this world. We have tutors that come every day and tutor our youngsters. And one of our future presidents of the United States will come out of ABC.
I bet that's right.
Well, Obama has proved that anybody can.
That's right.
Obama has proved that anybody can make a difference. Yeah, you gotta put that on there, Lonesome. That's the name of this. Let's call it Lonesome Lon.
Lonesome Lon interview. In fact, we'll shoot an interview. As Lonesome Lon here, I'm going to be doing an interview with Billy Moore.
Yeah. Well, see, yeah.
Oh wait, we're still.
I can do it now. Then.
Yeah, let's do it right now. Do it right now.
We're still recording right now. I didn't think about it. So anyway, let me back up.
Yeah. But I don't have to talk anymore.
And I'll just say, hey,
Yeah.
this is Lonesome Lon getting ready to do an interview here with Mr. Billy Moore
Yeah.
of the Anybody Can Foundation. Got that's
Yeah.
real interesting stories. Start here in a few minutes.
That's cool.
And then you go, you look at him, and then I can take back to where he's asking the first question. Or actually, you ask the question again. And then we'll go shoot a Andy. Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Moore.
Ask the right question.
But we ought to start doing this every time Lonnie comes here.
Yeah.
This is wheat stuff.
We, that's right, we.
So he made, hey, this is Lonnie Bearden, the Lonesome. I didn't know this old Lonesome Lon here getting ready to do another interview with Billy Moore. Or actually, this is going to replace the one we did before. So
You ready?
good.
Hey, how's everybody doing out there? This is old Lonesome Lon, and I'm back here again with Billy Moore, the son of Archie Moore, famous boxer who had over 200 bouts. I want to say, conservatively, probably over 150 knockouts. We're going to be having some questions and some stories here from Mr. Billy Moore, and we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. Wow, that was very interesting and exciting. Just like you were almost there on the train with your dad, and all those knockouts and all those fights is just amazing. I mean, more professional fights than anybody has ever had, and that's just so amazing and exciting. And he was kind of the strong, silent type, I could tell. He had to be to survive and to carry on. And we're going to be doing some more of these, and we're talking a lot. So until next time, this is Lonesome Lon. We'll see you again.